They planted an HOA sign on my land. 4 private security guards rolled through my ranch gate and ordered me to stop restoring my $7.8 million lake cabin. Their HOA president stood behind them, claiming she controlled my shoreline, my construction, even the road beneath their SUVs. I knew my cabin wasn't in her HOA. But one thing bothered me. She kept calling Clearwater Ridge Road theirs. So I stopped arguing and started digging. What I found buried in an old access agreement turned a $25,000 HOA threat into a problem affecting 226 homes. And when Karen finally locked a steel gate across my own road, she triggered the one clause she never knew could unravel her entire claim. If you enjoy stories where patience, old records, and the law matter more than shouting, subscribe and stay with me, because you'll want to hear the question the judge asked when Karen's lawyers finally had nowhere left to hide. The first black SUV came through my wooden ranch gate at 9:17 on a Tuesday morning. The second followed 10 yards behind it. I was halfway up a ladder replacing cedar siding on the lake cabin when both vehicles stopped on Clearwater Ridge Road. 4 men stepped out wearing dark uniforms with private security stitched across their chests. I set my hammer down. One of them pointed toward me. "Caleb Morgan? That depends who's asking. Silver Creek Shores HOA has authorized us to suspend all construction activity on this property." For a second, I thought I'd misunderstood him. Behind me stood a 1931 stone and timber fishing cabin overlooking Clearwater Lake. I'd spent months restoring it. The cabin and surrounding lakefront were now worth roughly $7.8 million, but the number didn't matter much to me. What mattered was that it was mine. Cabin, dock, shoreline, ground beneath my boots. All of it sat inside Morgan Lake Ranch, 2,160 acres my family owned in western Colorado, and Silver Creek Shores wasn't part of it. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The guard noticed. "Sir, we'd prefer you put that away. I'd prefer you explain why 4 private security officers just drove through my gate." Before he could answer, another vehicle appeared. A white luxury SUV stopped behind them. Vanessa Whitmore stepped out. I'd met the president of Silver Creek Shores exactly twice. That was enough. 50 years old, perfectly composed, never raising her voice because she didn't need to. Vanessa had mastered that particular kind of authority, where every request sounded like a decision somebody else had already made for you. "Caleb," she said, "this doesn't need to become unpleasant. You brought security onto my ranch. You refused multiple compliance notices because I'm not in your HOA." Her expression barely changed. "The cabin falls within Silver Creek's lakefront architectural authority. Your exterior materials, dock modifications, lighting, and structural work were never approved." I looked at the cedar board in my hand, then at her. "You approve siding now? We regulate structures affecting the visual character of Clearwater Lake. No, you regulate your subdivision." One guard stepped closer. "Sir, we're asking you to stop work voluntarily, and I'm asking you to stay exactly where you are." That stopped him. I slowly turned my phone, recording all 4 men, both SUVs, Vanessa, and the road beneath them. Vanessa finally showed irritation. "Caleb, continuing construction after formal notice could expose you to substantial penalties. My deed doesn't contain a Silver Creek covenant. This is bigger than a covenant." That sentence caught my attention. She walked toward the cabin and pointed past me toward the restored dock. "Our authority includes the shoreline access corridor and associated approach." Associated approach. I looked past her toward Clearwater Ridge Road. For decades, Silver Creek residents had driven that pavement between the county highway and their 226 homes. Delivery trucks used it. School buses used it. Vanessa's security had just used it. Everyone called it the Silver Creek Road. I had too, sometimes, but I'd spent 35 years in heavy civil construction. Roads weren't just asphalt to me. They were grades, rights-of-way, easements, plats, legal descriptions. And something about her wording bothered me. Associated approach, according to what? Vanessa gave me a thin smile. Recorded community access rights. Show me. You'll receive everything through the appropriate process. There it was. Authority without the document. I climbed down from the ladder. The guards shifted when my boots hit the ground, but I kept my hands visible and my voice level. I wasn't going to give Vanessa an angry rancher she could put in front of a judge. I wanted paperwork. You produce a recorded instrument giving Silver Creek authority over this parcel, I said. Nobody touches my cabin, my dock, or my equipment. Vanessa stared at me. You're making this harder than necessary. Maybe. I pointed my phone toward the road again. But there's something I'd like you to answer first. She folded her arms. What? I looked at the black SUVs parked on Clearwater Ridge Road, then at the old fence line running beside it. A memory surfaced. My father at the ranch office years ago, complaining about developers and access agreements. At the time, I'd barely listened. Now I wished I had. I looked back at Vanessa. Who told you this road belonged to the HOA? For the first time that morning, she didn't answer immediately. The wind moved across Clearwater Lake behind us. One of the security men glanced down at the pavement. Vanessa recovered quickly. Silver Creek has controlled this road for 25 years. Controlled, not owned. I stopped arguing, because Vanessa Whitmore had just sent 4 security officers onto my ranch to stop me from restoring my own cabin. And standing there listening to her carefully chosen words, I started wondering if she'd made an even bigger mistake. Vanessa thought she was standing on the HOA's road. I wasn't so sure. But to understand why that question mattered, you have to go back 6 months, to when Silver Creek Shores barely registered in my mind. I'd returned to Morgan Lake Ranch after years of avoiding it. My wife and I had once planned to restore the old 1931 fishing cabin together. After she died, I couldn't bring myself to touch it. The roof sagged, mortar had fallen from the chimney, half the dock leaned toward Clearwater Lake like it was tired of fighting gravity. Eventually, I got tired of avoiding it too, so I opened my toolbox. Restoration gave me something grief hadn't, a problem I could actually solve. I stabilized the stone chimney, replaced rotten cedar, rebuilt the porch without erasing the original timberwork, and pulled damaged pilings from beneath the dock. I wasn't building some glass mansion on the water. I was saving what had already been there for nearly a century. By early summer, the place finally looked alive again. That's when Vanessa Whitmore appeared. She walked up while I was fitting a cedar railing and handed me a thick envelope bearing the Silver Creek Shores seal. What's this? A formal stop work notice. I actually laughed. Then I opened it. The first page demanded that I immediately suspend exterior restoration pending approval from something called the Lakefront Architectural Influence District. The second listed alleged violations: unauthorized cedar finish, non-conforming exterior lighting, unapproved dock restoration, historic exterior materials inconsistent with community standards. At the bottom was the number that stopped being funny: $25,000, $25,000 for fixing my own cabin. Vanessa remained perfectly calm, for proceeding after informal concerns were raised. Nobody raised concerns with me. They were documented internally, inside an HOA I don't belong to. Her smile tightened. Your parcel affects the visual integrity of Clearwater Lake. Silver Creek has authority extending beyond individual lot boundaries in certain circumstances. I'd spent decades reading construction plans, right-of-way documents, and survey sheets. Fancy language didn't impress me. Recorded rights did. Show me the easement. Vanessa paused. What? The recorded architectural easement giving your HOA authority over Morgan Ranch. This isn't that simple, it usually is. I went inside and returned with the deed. Morgan Lake Ranch. 60 acres. The cabin parcel, shoreline, and dock were inside the legal description. No Silver Creek covenant, no architectural restriction, no HOA membership. I held the deed toward her. You've got the wrong property. She didn't even look at it. You'll receive further instructions. Then she turned and walked back toward Clearwater Ridge Road. That bothered me more than the fine. People who discover they've made a mistake usually check the evidence. Vanessa didn't. She already believed she knew what came next. 2 mornings later, I found the first orange survey stake near my dock, then another 20 yards uphill, then a third beside the gravel path leading to the cabin. None carried a county surveyor's cap or identification. I photographed each one before touching anything. The line they formed made no sense according to my deed. It curved inward from the Silver Creek side, crossed part of my shoreline, then reached toward Clearwater Ridge Road. I stood there comparing the stakes to the parcel map on my phone. This wasn't about lanterns. It wasn't about cedar siding. And it sure as hell wasn't about $25,000. Someone was trying to create a new boundary on the ground. I called the county recorder that afternoon and requested every covenant, easement, plat, access agreement, and right-of-way connected to my parcel. Then I started a binder. Every notice, every photograph, every date, every conversation I could document. I had learned something over 35 years of construction disputes. When somebody starts moving lines, you stop arguing and start preserving evidence. That evening, I walked down to the dock. 3 orange flags moved beside Clearwater Lake. Yesterday, they hadn't existed. Today, Vanessa wanted them to look official. The question wasn't whether Silver Creek had authority over my cabin. My deed already answered that. The real question was why an HOA would fabricate authority over land it clearly didn't own. And I was beginning to suspect the answer had nothing to do with my cabin. The pressure changed after that. A drone appeared over the dock the next morning, hovering long enough to photograph the roof and shoreline before turning toward Silver Creek. 2 days later, I caught contractors measuring beside the orange stakes. I filmed them from the porch. "Who hired you?" One man lowered his measuring rod. "Silver Creek Shores." "Do you have permission to survey Morgan Ranch?" Neither answered. They packed up. Then came the notices. One on my ranch gate, another taped to a dock post, a third claiming continued restoration could result in enhanced enforcement. I saved everyone. My evidence binder was getting thicker. Then Vanessa made the mistake I couldn't ignore. I drove toward town one morning and found a new sign planted beside Clearwater Ridge Road. Silver Creek, Shores residents and authorized guests. Only 2 steel posts had been driven into the ground inside my fence line. I stopped my pickup and photographed it from every angle. Then I called Sheriff Aaron Mitchell. Aaron arrived 40 minutes later in a county cruiser. Vanessa showed up before he'd finished examining the sign. "I assume Mr. Morgan called you," she said. He did. Vanessa opened a leather folder and produced a color map. This should clarify things. The map showed Clearwater Ridge Road marked as community access. Worse, a shaded corridor extended from the road toward my shoreline and clipped the edge of my dock. I stared at it. "Where did you get that? Our association records?" That wasn't my question. Vanessa looked at Aaron instead. "Silver Creek has maintained and controlled this access for decades." Aaron studied the map, then my deed copy. "Caleb, you've got one document saying one thing and she's got another. Mine's recorded, and hers creates enough of a boundary dispute that I can't decide title standing beside a road." I hated the answer, but he wasn't wrong. So they can trespass if somebody crosses onto clearly established private ground after being warned. Document it and call me. But I'm not going to settle competing property claims with handcuffs. We verify the records first. Vanessa gave me a small, satisfied look. That was when I understood what she wanted. Not necessarily to prove she owned anything, just to create enough uncertainty that everyone else hesitated. I pointed toward the sign. "That stays?" Aaron looked at Vanessa. "I'd recommend nobody alter anything until the county verifies the boundary." Perfect. Vanessa had planted her sign on land I believed was mine, and now uncertainty protected it. So I changed tactics. No shouting, No cutting posts. No touching orange stakes. I photographed everything. Dates, coordinates, vehicles, contractors, drone flights, notices. I recorded the sign against permanent landmarks and added every item to the binder. If Vanessa wanted to manufacture a history of control, I was going to preserve a history of how she manufactured it. That evening, I walked the fence beside Clearwater Ridge Road. The Silver Creek sign stood there like a flag planted after an invasion nobody had legally won. Then I remembered my father. Years earlier, a developer had come to the ranch house carrying rolled plans and talking about subdivision access. Dad had listened quietly before saying something I hadn't thought about in years. Never confuse permission with ownership. I stopped walking. Permission Silver Creek had been using Clearwater Ridge Road for roughly 25 years. Everyone treated it like their road. But I suddenly couldn't remember my father ever saying he'd sold it. I looked through the fence toward the pavement, the HOA's sign, their security, their maps, their confidence. What if all of it rested on one assumption nobody had bothered checking? I pulled out my phone and called my daughter. "Rachel," I said when she answered. "I need an engineer." She laughed softly. "That's a terrible way to say hello, Dad. Bring your laptop." Her tone changed. "What happened?" I looked at the road. "I think somebody forgot who owns it." Because if Clearwater Ridge Road had never been transferred to Silver Creek, Vanessa wasn't just claiming part of my shoreline. She had been sending people onto Morgan Ranch using a road her HOA might not own at all. Rachel arrived the next morning with 2 laptops, a survey scale, and the expression she used whenever somebody had drawn something badly. My daughter was 31 and a civil engineer. She'd spent enough years reading plats to know when a line didn't belong. I spread everything across the cabin table. My deed, county parcel maps, Vanessa's community access map, photographs of the orange stakes. Rachel compared them without speaking. Then she enlarged the original subdivision plat. "Dad," she traced Clearwater Ridge Road with one finger. "This road never leaves the Morgan parcel." I leaned closer. "You're sure? The property line follows the eastern edge here. The pavement stays inside it all the way to the Silver Creek entrance. Then why does their map call it community access?" Rachel looked at me. Access isn't ownership. That afternoon, we met County Surveyor Michael Turner. Michael pulled the original Silver Creek development files from 2001. Most were ordinary: grading plans, drainage calculations, utility approvals. Then he found a thin folder marked Access. Inside was the document that changed the fight. Conditional Road Access License. My father's signature was at the bottom. The original Silver Creek developer had been granted permission to use Clearwater Ridge Road for subdivision traffic. 25 years, no transfer of title, no permanent easement. Ownership expressly remained with the Morgan family. I read that section twice. Michael tapped the plat. "Silver Creek may maintain the traveled surface under this agreement." That probably explains why everyone started treating it like their road. But legally, it's your road. I felt the first real shift in the ground beneath this fight. Not because I'd gained anything, because I'd discovered I had never lost it. Rachel turned several pages. "There's more." Paragraph 14 was buried near the back under termination and default. The language was dry, the meaning wasn't. The owner could terminate the access license if the subdivision, its successors, association, or agents asserted ownership over Morgan property, attempted to impose regulatory authority upon Morgan property, or materially obstructed the owner's use of Clearwater Ridge Road. I looked at Rachel. The sign, she nodded. "The cabin notices, the security," Michael added, "and potentially those shoreline claims." By evening, I was sitting across from Daniel Brooks, a 59-year-old property rights attorney who had represented ranchers long enough to distrust any document containing the phrase community interest. He read paragraph 14 once, then again. Finally, he leaned back. "This is unusually specific. My father didn't trust developers, apparently with good reason." I pushed Vanessa's $25,000 notice toward him. "Can we terminate their access?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he arranged the evidence across his desk: Vanessa's notice, the HOA sign, the map, security photographs, orange stakes. If these acts qualify under paragraph 14, potentially yes, then do it. No, that surprised me. Why not? Because right now Vanessa can claim mistake. Bad records, confused board, misunderstood authority. She sent security onto my land. And I want to know whether she did it believing the HOA owned something, or knowing it didn't. I understood. Intent changed the case. Daniel tapped the license. If we move now, they'll retreat. Blame an old map, remove the sign, and spend 6 months trying to repair their position. So we wait, we document. I'd already been doing that. Daniel slid paragraph 14 back toward me. Caleb, don't threaten Vanessa with this. Don't mention the road license. Don't tell Silver Creek what we've found. Why? Because if she doesn't know we're watching, she may keep putting her intentions in writing. Outside his office, I stood beside my pickup with a copy of the 2001 agreement in my hand. For weeks, Vanessa had treated paperwork like a weapon. Now I had one document she didn't know I'd found. 25 years of access rested on permission from my family, and Vanessa had spent the last month behaving like permission meant ownership. My phone rang. Daniel, I had barely left his parking lot. One more thing, he said. What? His voice was calm. First, we proved she knew, then he hung up. 2 days later, someone inside Silver Creek Shores called me. And she knew exactly what Vanessa had been hiding. The number was blocked. Caleb Morgan speaking. My name is Linda Parker. I'm the treasurer for Silver Creek Shores. I sat straighter. I know who you are. Then you know I shouldn't be making this call. Linda didn't sound dramatic. She sounded scared, which carried more weight. She asked me to meet her at a roadside diner 20 miles from Clearwater Lake. Daniel told me not to go alone, so he sat 3 booths away while Linda slid into the seat across from me. She was 48, tired-eyed, carrying no purse and no HOA binder. I've watched Vanessa tell the board you're illegally rebuilding on association-controlled shoreline, she said. You know that's false? I know our attorney told her it was false. That was the first sentence that mattered. I kept my voice level. When? Before your stop work notice, Daniel stopped pretending to read his menu. Linda continued. Vanessa has been pushing something she calls historic HOA control. She says if Silver Creek can document enough years of maintenance, enforcement, and uninterrupted use around your shoreline, it strengthens our position. Position for what? Linda looked toward the window before answering. I don't know everything. That's part of why I'm here. She explained that several closed board sessions had taken place before Vanessa ever approached me. Normal financial discussions were recorded in the minutes. Those meetings weren't. An outside development group had attended at least 3. They brought site plans, Linda said. Large ones. Lakefront drawings. My stomach tightened. Did they discuss my cabin, your shoreline, your road? I heard both. Now Daniel joined us. He introduced himself and asked Linda to repeat everything slowly. She did. Vanessa had instructed board members to refer to Clearwater Ridge Road as association-controlled access in correspondence. She had pushed for photographs of my restoration. She had requested measurements near the shoreline, and after I rejected the $25,000 notice, she told the board they needed to establish the record more aggressively. Orange stakes, drones, security, sign. It wasn't random escalation, it was documentation. They weren't just trying to scare me, they were trying to create paperwork that made their authority look older and more legitimate than it was. Daniel asked, Do you have copies of these discussions? Some. Linda lowered her voice. Vanessa controls the official minutes. Anything involving the development group gets summarized verbally or left out. Then what can you prove? For the first time, Linda hesitated. There is a letter. What kind of letter? From Silver Creek's attorney. Daniel leaned forward. What does it say? I only saw it once. Vanessa brought it into executive session after asking counsel about the Morgan boundary. And, Linda looked directly at me, It says Silver Creek doesn't own your shoreline. I said nothing. It also says the association doesn't own Clearwater Ridge Road. There it was. Daniel's missing piece. Not merely that Vanessa was wrong, that she'd been warned. Do you have the letter? He asked. Linda shook her head. It's in the association office. Vanessa removed it from the board packet and told us it was privileged and irrelevant. Can you lawfully access it as treasurer? I can access the board records, but if she realizes I'm copying documents, you don't steal anything, Daniel said immediately. You don't break into anything. You preserve only records you're authorized to access, and we'll obtain the rest through legal process. Linda nodded, relieved. I respected him for saying it. We weren't going to beat Vanessa by becoming Vanessa. Before leaving, Linda wrote 3 dates on a napkin. Closed board meetings. All 3 occurred before my first violation notice. I folded the napkin and put it inside my evidence binder. At the door, Linda stopped. Caleb, I looked back. There was something else on those development plans. What? A number. How much? I don't know. But it had enough zeros that Vanessa stopped talking about your cabin like an eyesore. She opened the door. She started talking about it like an obstacle, then she left. Daniel watched her car disappear. We know Vanessa was warned, I said. We know a witness says she was warned. Difference in court? A big one. He tapped my binder. We get the document. I looked toward the mountains beyond the highway. A month earlier, Vanessa wanted me to believe this fight was about cedar siding and architectural harmony. Now there was a developer, secret meetings, lakefront plans, and an attorney warning she'd buried. The question had changed. It wasn't why Vanessa wanted control over my cabin anymore. It was what sat behind my cabin that was valuable enough for her to risk the entire HOA trying to take it. 3 days later, Linda gave us the answer. She didn't remove anything from the HOA office she wasn't authorized to access. Instead, as treasurer, she preserved copies of board correspondence and financial records that had already been circulated to her. Daniel reviewed everything before I touched it. Then he called me. Come to my office. Spread across his conference table were emails, board minutes, preliminary site plans, and one document stamped confidential development concept. The plan showed Clearwater Lake, Silver Creek Shores, Clearwater Ridge Road, and my shoreline. 420 feet of Morganby had been outlined in blue. Beyond it were proposed luxury homes, a private marina, and a lakefront recreation complex. I stared at the projected access route. It ran straight down Clearwater Ridge Road. They need my land. Daniel nodded. And your road. The developer wasn't offering to buy Morgan Lake Ranch. The proposal assumed Silver Creek could deliver permanent shoreline access and transportation rights as part of a multi-million-dollar expansion. My cabin sat directly in the way. Suddenly, Vanessa's behavior made sense. The $25,000 notice, the orange stakes, the drones, the fake community access map. If she could manufacture enough evidence showing Silver Creek had historically regulated the shoreline, maintained access, and controlled the road, she could create leverage against me, maybe enough to force a settlement, maybe enough to make a developer believe the HOA had rights it never possessed. Then Daniel handed me the document we'd been waiting for. Silver Creek's attorney warning, dated 11 days before Vanessa issued my stop work notice. I read the key paragraph slowly. The association possessed no recorded ownership interest in the Morgan shoreline, no architectural authority over the cabin parcel, and Clearwater Ridge Road remained titled to the Morgan family, subject only to the conditional access license. At the bottom, Council recommended that Silver Creek make no representation of ownership without further title review. Vanessa had been warned in writing, then she'd sent me a $25,000 fine anyway. Daniel leaned back. Now we can prove knowledge. My anger wasn't loud. It settled somewhere deeper. She knew. She knew enough that any reasonable board president should have stopped, and instead she escalated. Daniel tapped the development plan. Because there was money behind the escalation. We still needed the history of the road, so I drove to see Walter Hayes. Walter was 73 and had ranched the adjoining property longer than Silver Creek Shores had existed. When I showed him the 2001 license, he laughed once. I remember this fight. What fight? Developer wanted your dad to sell Clearwater Ridge Road outright. He refused 3 times. Walter pointed toward the ridge. Your father didn't want 200 families depending on some goat trail if the main road disappeared. So he allowed access. But he kept ownership because he didn't trust what that subdivision might become. Did Vanessa know? Don't know about Vanessa. But Silver Creek knew. Your dad made damn sure their developer knew. That distinction mattered. My father hadn't trapped Silver Creek. He had helped them. He gave families a safe road while protecting Morgan Ranch from exactly what was happening now. Back at the cabin, I stood beside the restored porch and looked across the water. For months, Vanessa had called this a dispute about architectural standards. It wasn't. The cabin wasn't the prize. The lakefront was. And Clearwater Ridge Road was the key that made the development possible. Daniel called before sunset. We have motive. We have the attorney warning. We have the license. I'm preparing the emergency filing. Good. But don't engage Vanessa. I won't. I'm serious, Caleb. Right now our evidence is clean. Let her make the next mistake. I looked toward Clearwater Ridge Road. A black Silver Creek security SUV passed the ranch entrance and continued uphill. I think she already has. Daniel paused. What happened? Nothing yet. I watched the taillights disappear. But people who believe they own something eventually try to control access to it. The next morning, Vanessa did exactly that, and she gave us something better than an email, a map, or a hidden board record. She put her claim behind a locked steel gate. I found it at 7:40 the next morning. I was driving toward the cabin with 2 restoration contractors behind me when brake lights flashed ahead. A steel gate stretched across Clearwater Ridge Road. New posts had been set on both shoulders. A heavy chain wrapped around the center, secured with a commercial padlock. Bolted to the gate was a white sign. Silver Creek Shores, HOA-controlled access entry by authorization. Only 2 private security guards stood beside a black SUV. I stopped my pickup 30 feet from the gate and shut off the engine. One contractor climbed out behind me. What the hell is this? Don't touch anything. I pulled out my phone. Photographs first, gate posts, chain sign, security vehicle, license plate, then video. One guard approached. Mr. Morgan, construction access has been suspended, pending resolution of the shoreline compliance dispute. Who installed this gate? Silver Creek Shores. Who authorized it? He hesitated. Then a white SUV rolled up from the opposite side. Vanessa stepped out. Of course, she walked to the gate but remained behind it. Caleb, I warned you this would escalate. You installed a gate across Clearwater Ridge Road. We've implemented temporary access controls. On whose authority? Silver Creek's. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because Daniel had told me to let her make the next mistake. She'd built one out of steel. I kept recording. Are you denying me access to my cabin? We're denying unauthorized construction traffic until you acknowledge Silver Creek's jurisdiction. Say that again. Her eyes narrowed. You heard me. I want the record clear. Vanessa stepped closer. Silver Creek will control access to this roadway until you comply with HOA requirements concerning the Morgan lakefront property. There it was. Road.control, Morgan property, all in one sentence. One of my contractors muttered something behind me. I raised a hand. Nobody touched the gate. Nobody touched Vanessa. I called Sheriff Aaron Mitchell, then Daniel. Aaron arrived first. He examined the gate, photographed the posts, and read Vanessa's notice. Who owns the ground under this? He asked. Vanessa handed him the same community access map. I handed him Michael Turner's county plat and the 2001 license. Aaron read longer this time. His expression changed. This says Morgan retains title. Vanessa crossed her arms. The HOA possesses access rights. Access rights aren't necessarily gate rights. Her confidence slipped for half a second. Aaron looked at me. Caleb, don't remove this yourself. Let the lawyers handle it. Wasn't planning to. Vanessa gave a short laugh. Then I suppose we're finished. No, I said. I think you're finished. She stared at me. Daniel's truck arrived 20 minutes later. He stepped out carrying his briefcase, walked straight to the gate, and photographed Vanessa's sign. Then I handed him my phone. He listened to her recorded statement twice. No smile, no celebration. Just that quiet attorney look that means somebody has made his job easier. Daniel pulled a copy of the road agreement from his case. Paragraph 14, he said. Vanessa's attorney warning had already proven she knew Silver Creek didn't own the road. Now her own security gate proved intentional obstruction. Daniel pointed to the language, attempt to regulate Morgan property. Check. Assertion of control over Morgan property. Check. Material obstruction of the owner's use of Clearwater Ridge Road. Check. He looked through the steel bars toward Silver Creek. She just triggered paragraph 14 in writing. For the first time since this started, the anger inside me gave way to something colder. Vanessa thought the gate showed power. Legally, it showed breach. What's next? I asked. Emergency injunction, certified survey, formal notice preserving your termination rights. And the gate? We ask a judge to deal with it. Vanessa was still watching from the other side. I didn't threaten her. Didn't tell her what paragraph 14 meant. I simply got back into my pickup and waited for Aaron to finish documenting the scene, because Vanessa believed she'd trapped me outside my own cabin. What she didn't understand was that Clearwater Ridge Road wasn't merely the route to my lakefront. It was the practical paved route connecting Silver Creek's 226 homes to the county highway. And by locking me out of the road my family owned, Vanessa may have just put every one of those homes on the wrong side of her mistake. Daniel moved before noon. He filed for an emergency injunction against Silver Creek's interference with Morgan property and asked the district court to formally recognize my ownership of Clearwater Ridge Road. Michael Turner started a certified survey the same afternoon. This time there were no orange HOA stakes. Michael set professional control points, checked the original monuments, tied them to the 2001 plat, and documented everything. Rachel followed his measurements independently. 2 days later, Michael placed the certified survey on Daniel's desk. The cabin was mine. The dock was mine. All 420 feet of disputed shoreline were mine. The steel gate Vanessa installed was on my land, and Clearwater Ridge Road remained inside Morgan Lake Ranch until the point where it entered Silver Creek shores. There was no competing recorded ownership. Daniel tapped the survey. This takes away their boundary argument. What about paragraph 14? That takes away something much bigger. Word spread, not from me. Silver Creek residents started asking why survey crews were working along the road. Then somebody obtained the court filing. By Friday, my phone was filling with messages. Are you closing the road? How are emergency vehicles supposed to get through? My kids use that road for school. One man left a voicemail accusing me of trying to hold the neighborhood hostage. Then Vanessa went public. She stood at the Silver Creek clubhouse and told residents I was attempting to exploit an old technicality to terminate access used by 226 families. A clip reached me that evening. This is no longer about one cabin, Vanessa told the room. Mr. Morgan is threatening the security of our entire community. I watched it twice, then turned it off. Rachel was sitting across the cabin table. You could close it, couldn't you? Daniel says we may have the right to terminate. That wasn't my question. I knew what she meant. Vanessa had blocked me. I could have responded by trying to block everyone, but those homeowners hadn't installed the gate. Kids riding school buses hadn't sent security onto my ranch. Families coming home from work hadn't fabricated shoreline authority. I don't want revenge on 226 households, Rachel nodded. Mom would have said the same thing. That one landed harder than I expected. The next morning, Daniel notified Silver Creek that I would allow ordinary residential traffic to continue while the court considered the case. No retaliation, no surprise barricade, no games. Emergency services, residents, deliveries, school transportation. Nothing changed. Vanessa couldn't say the same about her gate. Under pressure from the emergency filing and Aaron's documentation, Silver Creek removed it. The holes where the steel posts had stood remained beside the pavement. I photographed those too. Then Daniel called. Vanessa filed a response. Let me guess. The road belongs to them, not anymore. That caught me. What? She changed arguments. Now they're saying Silver Creek has relied on the road so long that access must be preserved regardless of title. I smiled. They finally admit it's mine. They're getting closer, but Vanessa wasn't finished. Her response accused me of using property law as leverage against innocent homeowners and claimed Silver Creek had acted in good faith based on historical practice. Good faith. That was the phrase Daniel had been waiting for, because Linda could destroy it. He subpoenaed board records, development communications, and the attorney warning she'd told us about. Linda called me that night. Her voice was steadier this time. I've decided something. What? If Daniel needs me in court, I'll testify. You understand Vanessa will know you talked? Yes, a pause. That's why I'm done being afraid of her. The hearing was set. Michael had the certified survey. Walter Hayes was prepared to explain why my father granted access in the first place. Daniel had paragraph 14, and Linda Parker was bringing the one document Vanessa had tried hardest to bury. For weeks, Vanessa had forced me to defend my right to restore one cabin. Now she was going to have to explain to a district judge why she'd risked the only practical paved road serving 226 homes to control land her own attorney had already told her she didn't own. Judge Rebecca Collins wasted no time. Daniel called Michael Turner first. Michael authenticated the original county plats, the 2001 subdivision records, and his certified survey. Where is Clearwater Ridge Road located? Daniel asked. On Morgan property until it reaches the Silver Creek boundary. Does Silver Creek Shores own any portion of the disputed road? Notat Vanessa's attorney stood. The association has maintained and used that road for 25 years, Michael nodded. Use isn't title. Then Walter Hayes testified. He explained how Silver Creek's original developer had tried repeatedly to buy the road from my father. He wouldn't sell, Walter said. But he wasn't going to leave families without safe access either. So he gave them permission. Permanent permission. Oh, conditional permission. That word changed the room. Then Linda Parker took the stand. Vanessa finally looked nervous. Daniel handed Linda the board correspondence. Did Silver Creek receive legal advice concerning Morgan Lake Ranch before issuing Mr. Morgan's stop work notice? Yes. What did counsel advise? Linda read from the letter. Silver Creek owned neither my shoreline nor Clearwater Ridge Road and had no recorded architectural authority over the cabin. The warning was dated 11 days before my $25,000 notice. Daniel placed the development plans beside it. Were these discussed before enforcement began? Yes. And what did the proposed project require? Mr. Morgan's shoreline and permanent road access, Vanessa's attorney objected. Judge Collins overruled him. Linda continued. Vanessa said we needed to establish historic HOA control. The courtroom went quiet. Daniel didn't rush. He let those words sit there. Then he approached the bench with the 2001 Conditional Road Access License. This is the document the entire case turns on. He walked through the agreement carefully. Morgan ownership remained intact. Silver Creek received access, not title. Then he reached paragraph 14. I watched Vanessa's attorneys begin reading ahead. Their expressions changed before Daniel finished. Silver Creek's access could be terminated if the association asserted ownership over Morgan property, attempted to regulate Morgan property, or materially obstructed the owner's use of Clearwater Ridge Road. Daniel displayed Vanessa's stop work notice, then the HOA road sign, then photographs of security on my property. Finally, the steel gate. Sheriff Aaron Mitchell's incident report confirmed that Silver Creek had installed it. My video supplied Vanessa's own words. Silver Creek will control access to this roadway until you comply with HOA requirements concerning the Morgan lakefront property. Nobody needed Daniel to explain it. Vanessa had done exactly what paragraph 14 prohibited. Her attorney stood quickly. Your Honor, whatever technical breach may have occurred, Clearwater Ridge Road has become indispensable to Silver Creek. 226 households rely upon that access. Daniel looked at me. There it was. For months, they had claimed control. Now they were asking not to lose permission. Judge Collins leaned forward. Counsel, are you withdrawing the association's claim that it owns Clearwater Ridge Road? A long pause. We acknowledge the recorded title is held by Mr. Morgan. That sentence was worth every photograph in my binder. Judge Collins looked down at the license. If Mr. Morgan has grounds to terminate this agreement, what alternative recorded access does Silver Creek Shores possess? Vanessa's attorney whispered with his colleagues. 30 seconds passed, then a minute. Finally, he stood. None comparable, Your Honor. The room went completely silent. No one celebrated, not Daniel, not Linda, not me, because the consequences had just become real. Vanessa hadn't merely lost an argument about cedar siding. She had gambled the practical paved access of 226 homes on a land claim her own lawyer warned her not to make. Judge Collins closed the file. I will issue my ruling after reviewing the requested relief. Vanessa turned toward me as everyone stood. For the first time, there was no authority in her expression. Only uncertainty. She had spent months trying to make me ask permission to use my own property. Now I held the legal power she thought belonged to her. But as I walked out of that courtroom, one question mattered more than winning. What was I going to do with 226 families whose road home was now sitting in my hands? Judge Collins answered the legal part 4 days later. Her written order affirmed my ownership of the cabin, dock, all 420 feet of disputed shoreline, and Clearwater Ridge Road. Silver Creek's claims against Morgan Ranch were rejected. The court also found the HOA's gate and enforcement campaign inconsistent with the conditional access agreement. Paragraph 14 had been triggered. I had grounds to terminate. The court awarded damages and legal costs, with the final amount to be determined. Daniel put the order on his desk. You can send notice today, and then Silver Creek loses its contractual access rights. I thought about the school bus I'd watched cross the ranch for years, the families who hadn't voted to put a gate across my road. My father gave them access because people needed a safe way home. Daniel nodded. I know, I won't punish them for Vanessa. So we offered Silver Creek something Vanessa never offered me, a fair agreement, a permanent recorded residential easement over Clearwater Ridge Road. No 25-year uncertainty, no threat hanging over ordinary homeowners. But the terms were firm. Silver Creek had to permanently disclaim any ownership or regulatory authority over Morgan Ranch. Every false sign, stake, notice, and enforcement claim had to be withdrawn. Private HOA security could not enter my ranch without lawful authorization or my permission. Silver Creek had to satisfy the court's damages and legal costs, and the HOA could never again represent my cabin, shoreline, dock, or road as association property. Daniel sent the proposal. Vanessa called it extortion at an emergency board meeting. Then Linda released the attorney warning to the membership. Everything changed. Residents learned Vanessa had known before issuing the $25,000 notice that Silver Creek didn't own my shoreline. They saw the development plans. They saw the closed session records. They learned she'd risked their access to Clearwater Ridge Road while negotiating a project that depended on land she couldn't deliver. The next Silver Creek meeting lasted nearly 4 hours. Vanessa entered as president. She left without the title. The board removed her authority over the Morgan dispute, and she resigned shortly afterward under pressure from residents demanding an independent review. The developer walked away within a week. Without my shoreline and permanent control of the road, the expansion didn't work. Silver Creek accepted our easement terms. The new agreement was recorded with the county. This time there was no confusion. Morgan Lake Ranch owned the road. Silver Creek residents had the permanent legal right to cross it. Permission and ownership, written clearly enough that nobody could pretend they were the same thing again. Months later, I drove the last screw into the cedar trim beside the cabin door. Restoration complete. Rachel stood on the porch behind me. Mom would have loved it. I looked at the stone chimney, the old timber, the dock stretching into Clearwater Lake. Yeah, that was enough. Near sunset, headlights appeared along Clearwater Ridge Road. A pickup came first, then a family SUV, then another car heading home toward Silver Creek. Nobody stopped them. Nobody needed to. The road had never been the enemy. Neither had the people using it. Vanessa's mistake was believing that control and ownership were interchangeable. She'd sent security down Clearwater Ridge Road to stop me from restoring my own $7.8 million lake cabin. She fined me, staked my shoreline, claimed authority over my ranch, then locked a steel gate across my road. And through all of it, she never asked the one question that would have stopped her before she destroyed her own case. Who owned the ground beneath her tires? I sat on the porch as the last vehicle disappeared beyond the ridge. For the first time since I'd returned, the cabin felt like what my wife and I had always wanted it to become. Home. My father had been right. Never confuse permission with ownership. I'd add one thing. Power isn't a deed, and the strongest boundary is the one the truth can prove.
If there's one lesson Caleb's story leaves behind, it's that standing your ground doesn't always mean setting the rate on everybody else. Sometimes it means keeping your recourse, knowing what you actually owe, staying calm when somebody raises you, and refusing to let anger make your decision. Caleb had the legal routes to terminate Silver Ridge road access, but he also understood that 226 families hadn't created the dispute, so he rotated his property while giving those families a permanent, lawful way home. There's something worth remembering in that. Rights matter, boundaries matter, but so does what we choose to do once the law finally recognizes those rights. Caleb didn't need to humiliate anyone. He needed the cabin his wife once dreamed of restoring, the ranch his father protected, and a clear agreement that couldn't be twisted again. Sometimes quiet strength is simply knowing where the line is and having the patience to rule it. If you think Caleb handled that road the right way, type yes in the comments. And if you ever deal with an HOA property line dispute, it means a neighbor who misunderstood where their right ended. I'd like to hear how you handle it. And if story about ranches, land on these stubborn homeowners and ordinary people standing firm through the law, are you kind of story? Subscribe and stay with us. There are plenty more roads, fences, lake, and property line with story let you tell.